Okay, guys, so basically what we're looking at right now is just finding out what's the cause of some of her internal rotation. Typically, a lot of times you see a lot of people with rounded shoulders, like my client here. It's because there's tightness within the chest. And what I'm doing right now is just really kind of finding some nodules that are tight, and we want to try to release those nodules before we go into our treatment. I'm using a percussion gun here. And basically what I'm looking for are certain nodules, and the percussion gun actually talks back to me. So just by feeling the tightness within that muscle. So it's basically the pectoralis muscle that I'm trying to get to, where it links on into the shoulder. So from the sternum, which is the middle of the chest, all the way to the shoulder, the anterior side of the shoulder, is where that muscle attaches to. I have her lifting her hands up because I want to try to get a little bit of flossing and a little bit of friction so that we can be able to get to that muscle in depth. Another reason why I put her hand up is because I want to try to get into that upper pectoralis muscle. And I like it because she's being calm, she's being cool. The gun is nothing to play with at all. I was constantly breathing. You can't see my mouth moving, but I'm constantly talking and speaking with my clients, just checking their comfort level, making sure that I'm not going too deep, or I'm not hurting them, or not having any discomfort within that muscle. I have to raise my hand up again just so I can see a little bit more deep within that muscle, and I have her pull her arm back so we can get a little bit of a stretch within that shoulder and going into shoulder flexion. And you'll see when I go into the shoulder flexion on both sides later in the video, you'll see what I mean by that. So after one side, of course, you have to do the other side. And again, just looking for nodules. This was a little bit more easier on her right side. And again, just looking for nodules within that chest. And I want to tell you guys, as a trainer, you want to make sure that, you want to practice safe movements. We also want to be really careful on our hand placement and where we place our hands on our clients. Again, I'm not saying you can't be afraid to touch your client, but you want to make sure that you have some rationale on why you're putting your hands on your client. As you can see, I'm kind of using my fingertips and I'm just kind of guiding through, feeling for those nodules within her chest. The percussion gun that I'm using right now is a medical gun, and this has like 7 or 8 attachments. Right now I'm using the foam ball attachment with this one because it's easier to glide across that muscle. And here I'm just going to check on both sides on the range of motion on what's happening here. As you can see, she has a little bit on your right side, my left side, but we have just a little bit of dysfunction there. Also pulling back, seeing how much range of motion we can get through her chest. All right, so now we're going to look at shoulder flexion. And I like using the dowel or the pole with a 5-pound weight on it, just so I can see what are some of the asymmetrical differences within her shoulder flexion. I'm looking for if one hand comes up higher than the other. The dowel kind of makes it hard to distinguish that, but you'll see throughout the video I'll use other techniques as well, that same motion with a different external force. As you can see, her hands are just shoulder width apart. Now I'm standing above my client because it gives me a better view as opposed to standing on top of her. And I can see where that dysfunction lies. And it is in her left arm. And now I'm using the 2 weights. These are 2.5s on each side. And again, this shows me a little bit more, just making a small adjustment for my client. And as she goes back, see just a little bit of unevenness, if that's even a word. But I like the control that Cynthia is using right here. But you'll see how one arm kind of comes up a little bit faster than the other arm, so that shows that there's weakness within that left side. And that's the first side that we actually did the release on for her chest. So I'm just kind of seeing if the dowel kind of wobbles back and forth, looking for, again, dysfunction. So now I took the dowel away and just guiding her down because I want to see both hands work independently now. As you can see, that one side kind of comes up faster than the other side. And I'm just speaking to her, giving her a little bit of reassurance on what to do and what I see. Again, communication with your client is so important. And you can see how one arm is slowly catching up with the other arm. So now what we're looking at now, we're looking at some scapular retraction. This is another thing that's a weak point when we're dealing with rounded shoulders like my client here has. I'm always talking to my clients and really kind of guiding them and trying to let them understand what it is that we're doing. Again, I'm placing my hands on my client, but I'm giving the rationale of what I'm looking for. I'm always looking at my camera, seeing different angles, because sometimes you have to rest your eyes, and look away from the client so that you can see something more than what your eyes are seeing. So looking away and looking at a camera or looking at a mirror at your client is always a good way to kind of reassure, kind of assess what you're looking at. Here I'm just giving her a little pointer here to squeeze in between my finger. And you can see how her shoulders come back and her elbows come up. So I'm going to do a correction on this because it's a propensity to want to pull the elbows back and do a row when I'm just looking for just a scapular retraction. You can see she got that there. Again, just showing reassurance for my client. I'm going to place my hands underneath her arms just so that I can reinforce what I'm looking for from her. As you can see, those muscles are firing in the back. Good. And that's me right there again. You see that right shoulder kind of comes up a little bit. But she's activating the muscle exactly the way that I need it to activate. And we're just having a discussion, just kind of going through and just telling her some of the things that we see normally within some of our clients and some of our patients that we see. And it's really important. So I gave you an example of a bent over row on what's important, as well as a single arm row. So again, I'm giving examples so that my client can understand and just trying to give the simplicity of the movement and the movements that we're doing. Now we're going to try to go for a round 2 on this one here. Again, I'm just checking my cameras out, making sure that everything is where it needs to be. Good. And I'm also reinforcing that she keeps her abs tight throughout. There, that's right, that's it right there. You can see how the muscles in the middle of her back are just firing off right where I'm pointing to. And I want her to feel it in that area. I always ask the question to my clients, where do you feel this? As opposed to me saying, do you feel this in your back? I want them to understand where they're feeling it. Good, just a little more reassurance. And we're almost done with this exercise here. Now we're going to go into a little more downward depression of the scapula. This exercise is so important because when we're doing lat pull downs, you'll notice that a lot of times we don't see this motion here. This is the start motion. So what we call this is kind of, just locking down the muscles, and we want to make sure that we inhibit the muscles that we don't need. So with this lat pull down, you see where I'm pointing at here. You see where the scapula is actually moving down and it's going to a downward rotation. When we're dealing with rounded shoulders, scapular rotation is very, 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 very important because it always wraps around our lats. So we don't want the scapula to move around our body. We want it to go into retraction. Here we're going to work on a little bit of external rotation. Again, just put my client in a position where she's not pushing her head forward or anything like that. I like the seated position on this because it gives more support through the lumbar spine and through the T-spine as well. So this is that external rotation, and what we're trying to work on here is just that infraspinatus. Oftentimes cue my client to keep the elbows tight by the side, because again, we have a propensity to want to flare those elbows out and we start moving into muscles that we don't want to have. While she opens up, those elbows are tight. And it's a very small movement, believe it or not. And she's feeling that. That's a big burn right there. Again, just reinforcing those shoulders back and down. It's a tough burn on this one here. What's crazy about this video is that my client, Cindy, she ended up going to a audition, and it was important that she showed proper posture, and she went to the audition, and because of her posture, she nailed the audition and she got the role. So I'm very proud of this moment for her. And now we're going to single arm external rotation with light resistance, and just making sure that we can still get those muscles fired off. And again, we're talking about rounded shoulders. As you can see in this, her posture has gotten so much better within the first few minutes of these movements. It's keeping those movements and putting it to memory, and also putting these movements into practice. It's very important. You see that elbow kind of came out just a little bit. So I'm just reinforcing once again. You see the grimace on her face where she really has to lock down that muscle. That muscle burns and it fires off something fierce. So now we're going to do the other side, but I'm going to show you the posterior side of Cindy here. Get the hair out the way. And again, you'll see right where that muscle starts to contract. Shoulders are backing down. And as she goes through the motion, see that dimple. And that shows me that there is a contraction that is happening within that muscle or within that region. And again, reinforcing, making sure that elbow stays by her side. This is one of the best exercises if you're dealing with any type of shoulder pain. I wouldn't say any type of shoulder pain, but if you're dealing with things that are going overhead, if you have an issue with reaching behind the car, and a lot of times we have that cramp in the back of our shoulder, it's due to weakness where that muscle does not actually function. So this right here is one of my favorite exercises actually. This exercise here is, I call it clocking. And what it does, it allows the client to actually work through a restricted anterior chain which is the front of the body, where she can't lean. And because she's on the floor, she can't do a lot of leaning forward nor backwards. So she's in a strict position. And this really works because I like when the elbow comes in, you're actually getting your lats a little bit. You're also getting through those posterior delts, which is the back of the shoulders. And again, what I'm looking for evenness. I'm looking that the arms are going through at the same time and they're coming out at the same time. They're not staggered or stacking around. So I'm going to show you an overhead view of this and what this looks like. So if you see exactly how those muscles are moving, scapula is moving beautifully. That downward depression, upward, posterior, anterior tilting of the scapula. This is exactly what we want. And she's moving really good right now. She has her neck and her cervical spine in a neutral position. We'll give it one more round here. And now we're going to move on to some scaption. What I like about the scaption is that, again, it gives me that restriction on the posterior chain or the back of the body. So I place her against my door and have her just raise 2 pounds in a V form, low and controlled. She's not going too high. So I have her stopping right around just above her shoulders. We're looking forward at a focal point. And again, just reinforcing on those shoulders. And actually, you'll feel this in your abs as well. Nice and controlled, nice and slow. And again, we're just going to reinforce once again for this second round. Always keep my eyes on my clients, making sure that they're doing everything properly. I try not to abandon my client. You see a lot of trainers where they give their client something to do and they just walk away from them. You know, in my eyes, that is client abandonment. So if they do something wrong and you're not watching them, then essentially it is your fault or it is our fault. So again, we want to always keep eyes on our client, staying professional at all times. She's doing really good right here. And it's burning. I can tell by her face, it is burning. But she's doing great. She got her core tight. She's standing with those feet together. Shoulders are back against the door and she's not elevating those shoulders. That's super important when dealing with the shoulders. So all of that right there was all about just really working through some of the problem areas. And now we can go to the strength portion of it and work through these lat pull downs. As you can see, it's perfect form. Pulling with control. Not jerking it. Same pace down, same pace up. Come in with that hair, man. I don't know what's going on. Again, just looking at my mirrors again, cameras, making sure that everything is where it needs to be. And this is a really strong movement here. And believe it or not, she's pulling right around 50 pounds. Super proud of her. But again, guys, if you guys have any questions on shoulder mobility or knee mobility, don't hesitate to give us a call. We'll push that.